then 9/11. And then all the roles that are coming up are all about terrorism. And then religion starts coming to play. And anybody who has a beard, attractive ones like yourselves, could you play terrorist number 1 and terrorist number 3? We have to build a culture in our community, whatever community we're working within, but within film and TV, of supporting one another. And I'm finding that the community that we've got now, that mindset has changed.
Are people coming to you saying, we have this Muslim scene in this TV show, how do we portray it in the best way possible?
Exactly that. So when I have an initial consultation with the producers and the directors, for example, there is this light bulb moment for them, which is, we didn't know that about Islam. We didn't get that. Wow, that's really interesting. And for them, they've learned something. I'm actually okay. I've got my own.
You bought your own chai?
I have. Always come prepared, my mum says.
So you're not going to have any of the chai that we just poured for you?
It's sunnah to accept, so I shall accept it.
Okay.
I'm sure it looks lovely, although what you just did really wants me to go to the toilet.
Oh my God. On that note, welcome to Aik Cup Chai Crossing Cultures. This is a vodcast presented to you by the Independent Urdu. The Independent Urdu, obviously up-to-date, latest news relating to the British Pakistani diaspora. This is a show where we talk to South Asian trailblazers who are blazing their own trail in their own rights, and we talk to them about their careers, their ambitions, the progression that they've made, and just have some gup-shop with one another. My name is Mim Shaikh. This is my co-host Ali. Or today, हम बात करेंगे with an individual who goes by the name of Sajid Varda. He is the founder of UK Muslim Film. Thank you a million times for joining us on the show.
You're more than welcome, and it really is a pleasure to be here. It's just so cozy, isn't it? Sofas, tea. I don't know what else. We probably just need some desserts.
Yeah,
you have to try the tea though.
Halwa puri,
Yeah, but you got to give us a
taste.
taste.
I will do. Who made it?
I actually made it. I'm
Ali, what do you think?
Let's hear your review.
I'm dreading the verdict.
That's quite nice.
It's a good start.
You've done a sterling job, my brother.
Appreciate it.
MashaAllah.
Because I see you've got something there by your
foot. I do apologise. What happens is that I tend to. I've become my dad. I never knew why my dad used to just enjoy drinking tea so much, especially in winter. It's like, he would go off and say, we're going to go and get some tea. It's like, oh, God, that's such an old person thing to do. Now look at me. I'm taking it with me in a flask.
Of all the guests that we've had, which is so far probably around 13, 14, you are the first to bring your own chai.
I feel embarrassed.
No.
I feel terrible.
You'll never be forgotten.
Honestly, this is lovely tea. I'm looking forward to finishing it. And the pot as well. Yeah.
Nice. Silver and gold.
I know.
So the first time I actually met you, right, was when you put on this event. And it was a coincidence that I came with one of my friends called Ruby. And the event was such a nice environment to be in, because there was all of these Muslim filmmakers, right? And being in that environment was just nice and humbling, and you felt like you're not by yourself working in this industry trying to tell stories. How did you get to that position of being able to put on an event like that at UK Muslim Film?
It's very kind of you to say, and I remember it was almost a year ago, wasn't it?
Yeah.
That we had that. It was the very first event that we had, which was really aimed at networking. Back a couple of years, we started in April 2021 with the support of the BFI, the British Film Institute, and we didn't know what the reception or the response would be, but our intent was to be a organisation that was there to work with the industry to change those mad perceptions that the industry have around who we are as people, as a Muslim community, as a global community, because a lot of the content that we see in the West is very tropey. And what I mean by that is a lot of stories are around Muslims being misogynist, women being oppressed, Muslims are terrorists, and Islam is a threat to the West. That's the kind of the common narratives and storylines. And it's annoying, it's eye-rolling. It's like, oh, great. Oh, okay, I can see a Muslim on screen. Oh, great. Okay, they're a terrorist. And it's like, right, okay, so is there anything out there which truly represents us as something other than what the world sees us as, right? And so the idea is working with the industry to say, right, how do we change that narrative? How do we help you tell better stories? How do we find great storytellers and bring them to you so that you can work with them and find these truly rich and authentic stories from around the world where you can actually make money from them as well, but at the same time changing that narrative. And the kind of the tag of our charity is changing the script. And so that's kind of one area. So we do a lot of consulting work, and the other area is around how do we enhance representation? How do we have more Muslims of all backgrounds working in all aspects of production, not just those like yourself, you're not just an actor, not just a pretty face, but you're also somebody who works behind the camera and writing. But how do we get more Muslims working across the board, but also and having them in positions of change and authority, and people who can actually commission projects as well. So that's the other thing. And how do we also change the way in the way in which the industry works? How do we ensure that the industry can accommodate Muslims in terms of the workplace? So there's a lot that we wanted to really do, but also how do we fast track Muslims into the industry? How do we level up the playing field, which is right now so skewed in one direction? So that was the idea behind UK Muslim film, and brought on board some wonderful people that I've worked with previously, like a team of volunteers. Just really, so far it's all been volunteer led. And for us, it was about, right now, we want to do networking events. How do we now bring people together in a room so that we can meet one another and not feel alone? Because one of the common things that Muslims are saying is that I'm the only one in this organization. I'm the only one in this production company. Or I know another Muslim, but we don't talk because if we kind of profess or wear Islam on our sleeves, it could be problematic for us. And that's such a sad thing to hear. So
the fact that people would have to be hiding their own identity.
Islam is so beautiful. We have such a beautiful, rich culture and heritage and deen. Which spans over 55, 56 countries around the world plus. 2 billion people around the world. What are we hiding for? We have to build a culture in our community, whatever community we're working within, but within film and TV, of supporting one another. And I'm finding that the community that we've got now, that mindset has changed, and there are some wonderful people coming to us as a charity and saying, can we help you?
Wow.
But like volunteer, we'll dedicate our time. So that the networker was something which is so precious for us, and alhamdulillah, we're going to be repeating that this year and kind of doing other events too.
Because you said you started in 2021
April,
and within like that was like last year. So 2023. Within 2 years, you was able to.
Within 2 years, we've consulted on shows for ITV, BBC, Channel 4, ITV Studios, Sony, Disney.
Now, when you mean consulted, what does that mean on a like a realistic level? Like, so are people coming to you saying, we have this Muslim scene in this TV show, how do we portray it in the best way possible?
Exactly that. So we hear from people who maybe at 3 different stages. It could be at development, it could be at scripted, or it could be at production stage. So it could be that they've got a great idea, but they really want to do a sanity check and say, look, we've got this idea, can we run it by you? Are we going to offend people? Is this going to cause offense? Is it genuine? Is it real? Is it authentic? Often or not, it's been written by someone who's not Muslim. So automatically it's like, we will need to take a look at it. But then you take a look at it and you can see that they really need somebody who is a Muslim writer who's maybe female, could be male, whoever, or from a maybe specific background as well, to help them, to give them a steer. My role would be to go in and say, this is great, this not so much, this is why, but this is how we can change it and make it better.
Okay.
And that will be at development. And then you have it scripted where, that's the idea. Then you have scripted, you review the script. It could be a feature film script, could be a pilot, drama, so whatever it may be. Again, it'll be reviewing it, making notes, going back to them and just being really frank and honest. I can tell you some really funny stories about where the frank and honesty kind of led the director to like, oh my God, what do we do? We've got 3 weeks until we film this.
What? So give us one gem or like something that's happened.
Well, just the third thing is staging. So in production, so we did a Channel 4 series called Screw.
Yes.
And
I remember this because I auditioned for
did
the
you?
role because what you're about to say is the Muslim guy who's one of the screws in Channel 4,
That's
right?
Yeah.
And they get him to wear the Islamic
that
hat.
wasn't a recommendation. That the writer wanted him to wear a prayer hat.
Okay.
So, but that's because he'd gone into prisons and he saw people wearing it. He loved that. So that's fine. If you want that, that's okay. But there was some certain parts of the script, elements of change and flipping the script around so it wasn't a radical Muslim, but it was a radical right-wing terrorist within the prison. But also staging the prayer scene. And we had about 20 non-Muslims all lined up doing salah. But I taught them the salah.
Okay.
How to do 2 rak'ah. What was interesting though, this big hall had these background artists who were doing the salah, who were prisoners, and then you could see some of the crew were coming into the room. By the time I'd started doing my kind of training session, there were about 45, 50 people crammed into this room. The directors, the producers, the grip, the DOP, everyone you can think of who were just observing me teaching them salah.
Wow.
And it was such a beautiful dawah moment. And by the time we'd finished, actually, I remember finishing, I said, right, congratulations, you're all Muslim now. And then it's just like this raucous laughter. It's like, God, Muslims can be funny. Yes, we can be. And
because that's interesting, right? Because if you wasn't there doing that, right, and you didn't lead them in that way, what would have happened for the prayer scene?
You
Where
would
would they
have
have
somebody
got the reference?
But this is it. You would have just somebody saying, I think this looks right.
But do you find that when you're consulting, do you find it's more for people not wanting to get into be viewed in a bad way rather than from an educational piece?
It's a bit of both.
Does that not bother you though a little bit?
No, it's both, because for them that there is genuine intent not to offend or insult, because it comes down to lack of understanding or of a faith. You don't really want to represent it in a way which is going to come across bad, because it's a brand. Don't forget, that channel, that production company has a brand.
I just feel like it's more from a pressure perspective from upstairs rather than them genuinely wanting to be educated.
I'd say it's both. There is the desire to be genuinely educated, because when I have an initial consultation with the producers and the directors, for example, there is this light bulb moment for them, which is, we didn't know that about Islam. We didn't get that. That's really interesting. And for them, they've learned something. All these people who didn't really know much about Islam have been learning so many rules of salah, rules of privacy, rules of engaging with women, so much stuff, like miscarriages. I remember speaking to the story team when I actually went to the studio, and there was a miscarriage storyline, and I remember quoting them the Hadith about how when a woman miscarries, that the baby that has been miscarried, when Allah asks the baby, for you is Jannah, is there anything else that you want? And they say, my Jannah is not complete without my mother. So the baby is able to then pull their mother into Jannah with the umbilical cord. The tears you could see streaming down the faces of these ladies who are not Muslim.
Wow.
And
because they've probably not experienced anything like that from an Islamic perspective.
Never.
Yeah.
So just through that work, alhamdulillah, so much of Islam has been communicated to people which ordinarily they had no idea. And so that's why the work is so valuable. And just kind of going back to your point as well, when we're kind of showing people how to pray, it was just, it was just interesting how one person came up to me afterwards, just before they started filming again, and he wasn't Muslim, and he said, I just wanted to tell you something. I said, sure. He goes, when I was doing those actions of going up and down and then putting my head on the floor, he goes, I felt such tranquility. He goes, I can't explain it, but I just wanted you to know.
Oh.
And then he walked off. I was like, what next?
You converted him.
It's just small things like that. And it alhamdulillah. I mean, I'm very blessed that we've been able to start this, that that we're bringing everybody from our creative community on board as well, because I feel that, we inshallah will be making a difference, even if it's just a small.
No, absolutely. I think you're making a big difference, because it made me feel included when I was there, right? Yeah. And the vibe that I'm getting from you is that I feel like this is what your purpose was meant to lead you down in doing.
Well, it wasn't modelling. Why are you laughing?
No, I'm laughing because it's not modelling now, because there's actually images of you online with headshots and stuff, because you was an actor in a previous life, right? And a producer. And you used to star in projects. Let's not forget about that.
I was a heartthrob on TV. It actually said that on the top of the newspaper article. That was on the Evening Chronicle.
So this
Meet
was
Biker Grove's new heartthrob.
Yes, because you was in Biker Grove.
I was, yeah.
And so if you was to compare the time then to the time now with like brown representation, how has it like changed?
Oh, wow.
Or
that's a really good question.
Was it? I'm assuming it was harder back then because there weren't.
Yeah, it was. I remember I started before the. It sounds awful. Before the internet. So how could you imagine existence without the internet? But there was no internet. It was 1990, and I did a comedy series which was called Teenage Health Week for Channel 4. I was one of the supporting cast. It was my first gig ever as a comedy, and I was like the only brown face. There was other black actors, but I was the only brown face, and I sensed this huge pressure from the South Asian community. We have someone on TV representing.
You
and
better do a good job.
It was an odd feeling, because wherever I went, people would recognise you, and that was like I'd say that was almost like proper fame, because there was no social media, there was nothing really. It's just newspaper and the TV, and that was it. And it was different because back then our challenge was about brown people being represented. Not so much Muslims, because that really wasn't a thing, and Islamophobia really wasn't a thing prior to 9/11.
True.
So it just seemed to be, I had the weight of the world on my shoulders, just being an Asian, a South Asian. But it was very different. Everything was really more about race, and there were very few jobs. I'd be up against the same old people.
Okay.
The Jimmy Mysteries and the Ronnie Jutties and the Meet Chunners and those folk. Lovely people, but it'll be like, oh shit, right, yeah. So who's gonna get this one? And that was it. And it was just such a lovely time where nothing was tarnished by social media. It was just felt really real and honest. It was just a beautiful time. And then 9/11, and then all the roles that are coming up are all about terrorism. And then religion starts coming to play. And anybody who has a beard, attractive ones like yourselves, could you play terrorist number 1 and terrorist number 3? And that was it. And for actors, creators in the industry, it was like either you have to write a story which fits in line with that narrative, or you need to take a role as an actor doing one of those roles. Otherwise, you're out of work. This is so lovely, Masha. You made this yourself?
Yeah, Masala Chai.
It's not like one of those Masala Chai tea bags.
No.
One of the reasons for our existence is about how do we level up the playing field? How do we bring greater access to Muslim creatives to the industry? When a bad show comes out, which is very negative about Muslims, who gets impacted?
The Muslim community.
Absolutely, but usually it's the women who wear hijab. Another thing that we're doing at the moment is the Muslim International Film Festival. So that will be, I suppose, the first of its kind in London. What I say to all filmmakers, please, whatever you do, you need to be prepared to stand in front of Allah and explain and account for what you've done.
It's bugging me because I need to ask
go
you.
On then, go on. A lot of things bug you, Ali, I've noticed.
How did you feel about 4 Lions then?
That's a really, really good
because
question.
just going on terms of like your intro of what your purpose was when you came into it, and then you get something like Four Lions where the impact it had was so good across all communities.
I really don't like you.
Not just the brown community.
Yeah.
But then obviously it's portraying a message which you're sort of anti of.
Yes, yeah. So it's twofold. Actually, funny enough, I think Adil Akhtar is amazing.
Oh my God.
I met Nigel as well, who played Barry, Barry,
yeah.
just the other evening. It was a very funny film. It really did poke fun at those, I suppose, those, youth who are, who's been kind of radicalized, but, with no real kind of real understanding around why they have been radicalized or what their purpose is, or it didn't seem they really had much agency within, perhaps a couple of characters did, but it was just really poking fun at, I suppose, people who want to be terrorists. And yes, it does fall into that trope, and it's a shame because when you look at the film, it's like Muslims immediately linked to terror, and that's part of the problem we have is we don't have many films as of late or TV shows which just portray Muslims as normal human beings. Those kind of films, even though it is extremely successful, and it is, when you watch it, there are certain laugh out loud moments, it can still be problematic. It's problematic because if we had many years of films that didn't portray us as the obvious, which is terrorists or linked with that in any way, 20, 30 years down the line, and then we started putting this kind of stuff out, it wouldn't be so bad. Because what we haven't done is, what we have done is then spent a lot of time showing Muslims as being something other than nefarious characters, people of evil intent.
But I think the smart thing about Four Lions and why Christopher Morris done such a great job is because it was satire. So if you're smart enough to understand what satire is, it's like poking fun at yourself in a way. But then on the other hand, it's like the person who's making it is not brown or Muslim themselves. So you have this kind of
top up.
You have this kind of imbalance where you don't really know what side to kind of.
But then it's about making assumptions about your audience as well, because again, it's who's watching it. Of course, as Muslims, when you watch it, it's funny, and we understand it. We understand the kind of the stupidity and the craziness of these individuals, but we also understand why they would want to do it because of what was going on, in terms of global events, what's happening in Bosnia, what's been happening in Iraq and other countries around the world too. So we get that, but we're not saying it's right. However, we also have to look at the mainstream audiences. They're not always going to be as discerning and be able to look at a film like Four Lions and say, well, Muslims aren't like that. For them, it's like, there you go.
That's what they're all
typical.
Like.
They're all like this. They'll be looking at your nearest Barry-esque type, Muslim Reva and think, I wonder, So
no, it's true. The majority of the population are not going to view it,
especially
in that perspective.
Especially if media is bombarding them with a narrative, which is so anti-Muslim.
Yeah. So what are people meant to do who are in a position of like aspiration, right? They've got stories that they want to get written, they want to get them commissioned. There's organizations like yourself, but they just can't like open the door. They can't get their foot in that door in order to get the funding or the finances to be able to make their story the way that they want to do it. Is self-funding the only way to kind of make that a reality?
Brilliant question. Absolutely. And that's one of the reasons for our existence, is about how do we level up the playing field? How do we bring greater access to Muslim creatives to the industry? How do we change that dynamic? And that's part of the work that we've done, which is bringing the industry to these events, where we've also, if you look at our social posts, where we are promoting and advertising for shows where they're looking for talent, for example, crew, production assistants, coordinators, casting agents, all of that kind of stuff. So,
because I guess a shift needs to take place behind the scenes.
It does, very much so. But we're also working at the coalface with those, I suppose, the commissioners, and kind of saying to them, look, we need to understand what you're expecting from these writers. They want to understand, can they truly write their own stories, or are they going to have to start changing that narrative within their own story to fit someone else's
And I guess the next
narrative.
debate would be like, how much do I sacrifice?
Absolutely, and writers don't want to now. And my advice to them is don't. You stick to what you're doing. Don't feel you need to change it and add things in there, which is only going to demonize us further. There has to be pushback.
It's really hard that though, because now,
it is.
Let's say you're a writer, you're not making a lot of money, and you've got a yes from a commissioner, and they've said, we want to change your story to do this. Now this writer's in a catch-22, right? Do I take the funding that I need to survive? Or do I say no and go somewhere else?
So this is the other thing that's happening, is that writers are now saying we really want to bring on UK Muslim film to give an opinion on this, because again, as an organisation, they're working with the industry to help protect your brand as well, and making sure nothing goes out there which is going to be problematic. So people are actually writing that as part of their agreements. I actually had one writer who wanted us to consult, but said, but I also want Sajid to produce.
Oh, wow.
I was like, okay, which is fine, because that's my background as well. But at the same time, for them, it was another layer of protection. And so the organisation I work with were absolutely fine with that. But it's something that we need to start. I'm not saying necessarily me or UK Muslim Film, but insist that there should be another pair of eyes that are looking over this to ensure sensitivities are taken into account. That you're not going to put something out there which is going to start insulting 2 billion people.
Yeah, exactly.
And have people with placards, throwing red paint at your front door. Okay, so they have to also be careful as well, because at the same time is that they're going to lose viewership. They're going to lose that trusted relationship with a big community, 4 million here, but also these shows are selling abroad. It's not all in isolation.
Yeah,
these shows go all around the world.
Yeah, everywhere, global audiences.
Absolutely. What you want to do is protect your brand, but also show that you understand communities and that you can be trusted with these stories.
What are the future aspirations of UK Muslim film, and what would you like to kind of manifest with your company and in the industry, etc.?
Yeah, alhamdulillah, that's a tough one. That is. So
because you've done so much in the last 2-3 years that you've already been operating, from what I've seen.
We've been, again, everything's from Allah. So it's I can't begin to explain the blessings that Allah has given just in opening doors of opportunity and bringing great people to us, and also opening doors here. Having the two of you say, we think you're worthy. Let's have a chat.
Of course. What do you mean?
But this is all from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So, and being able to communicate to your audiences, your wonderful audiences, about the work that we're doing as well. So what we want the Muslim community to see is that, look, humanitarian work, aid work is really important. So when you're supporting all these projects abroad, when you are, building mosques, all of these things are great. But I feel that with what's going on around the world right now, especially in Palestine, we understand the importance of media, film and TV. These are those platforms which inform the minds of the masses. You can see that. If it's done well, then the right message gets out there, it can make a difference. If the wrong message gets out there, it's problematic for us. So when a bad show comes out, which is very negative about Muslims, who gets impacted?
The Muslim community.
Absolutely. But usually it's the women who wear hijab. So the next day, there's a sense of fear and dread because this show has come out and they're worried about how people are going to treat them. So it's a very real problem, and people have been attacked, others have been murdered. We know that. So the issue comes down to how do we still continue to work with the industry and expand that work? That's one area. The other thing is about bringing in audiences and being able to educate them. So we just did a screening with the BFI just very recently with in partnership with the BFI, and we showcased a wonderful feature doc on a guy called Shorty, who was a convert to Islam, but he was a rapper. But he was also a gangbanger. He was somebody who was heavily into gang life in the US, and it was just his story about how he went from there to meeting Ice Cube, to setting up a rap group, being his protector and enforcer, and then eventually becoming a Muslim and changing and doing more kind of educational work and trying to get people out of gangs. People absolutely loved this, and the filmmakers came over from America. We had a whole mix of people, but for them it's wow. We're not only getting to see something about culture and the rap culture, but we're also getting to meet Muslims from America. We've got so many different life experience altogether.
And it's an uplifting story rather than a demonizing one.
Absolutely. So that's one thing, is doing more of these screenings, more networking events. You know, we are collaborating with many of the different big broadcasters and streaming platforms, production companies, to open up more opportunities for Muslims. And those are, you know, through our social channels. You can see a lot of stuff is coming out and people are applying. Another thing that we're doing at the moment is the Muslim International Film Festival. So that will be, I suppose, the first of its kind in London, where we're going to be showcasing Muslim filmmakers from around the world.
Amazing.
And it's not necessarily about showcasing their work, which has to be about Muslims and Islam, but it could be about anything. But we have an ethos, and the ethos is, what we don't want to do is glorify nudity and violence and kind of sexual themes, but we want to, there are so many stories that don't need that, so we want to platform them, but also people who are in other faiths as well, who've made some wonderful films that are around, maybe loosely themed around community and faith, may have a cast or crew made up of Muslims as well. We want to honor them too, and we want to bring the industry down and mainstream audiences, and really have this as a way for Muslim filmmakers, you know, almost fast track them, get the world to see what they're up to, for people to view Muslim contribution to cinema, but also at the same time for the industry to, you know, to see these real gems and say, I'd love to work with you. So how can I help accelerate careers for people? Because I'm old, right? There's going to be time I won't be around, but that's why I'm trying to pedal as fast as possible to get those relationships and connections and the networking done. So when I am long gone, inshallah, the work will continue. And I hope and pray that people don't compromise their faith just to get ahead. And that's what I say to all filmmakers, please, whatever you do, you need to be prepared to stand in front of Allah and explain and account for what you've done. I'm not doing that for you. I'm going to help you with the opportunity, but you need to make sure that you're comfortable explaining yourself in front of Allah.
Yeah, because faith is very individual, right?
Absolutely.
And that's between an individual and their God. So, but what you're doing and what you have done, I think, is absolutely amazing, because it helps people who might feel like they're a small island, like navigating by themselves. We asked our guests all this question. If there was the younger version of you, or someone that wants to work within the film industry, doing something similar to, say, what you're doing, whether that's in front of the camera, behind the camera, VFX, studio, audio, anything, what kind of words of encouragement or advice would you kind of leave them with?
Get in touch. What I would say is there are a lot of schemes out there. So there is definitely a willingness for the industry to do more around representation and diversity. Alhamdulillah, very recently I was made a BAFTA member. That itself was like, okay, I've been recognised after 30 years. This is lovely. But even BAFTA as well, you know, they really are making so many strides to change the way in which underrepresented groups are being honoured, and I suppose the opportunities, trying to widen those and create more, like the BFI and other organisations. They've got a long way to go. All organisations got a long way to actually go. But what I'd say is this, is that think about what you want to do, and there is definitely there's actually a shortfall of about 30,000 people right now in the industry, because actually up until recently, obviously prior to the strikes, there was a huge need for people. It will return again, because if you imagine, a lot of crews are being signed up for like 1-2 years, especially if it's a returning series. So a lot of shows don't have enough people, like production coordinators, production accountants. They need set builders, VFX. So think about what you want to do, and there are plenty of opportunities where you can go online. Even, you know, we're going to be launching our resource pages, where we're going to be listing all the different places that you can get skills, training, or mentorship. You apply to production companies and say to them, this is what I'm planning on doing, or I'd like to actually do. Do you have a role in X? So go to the likes of Sky Studios or BBC Studios, maybe apply at Amazon or Netflix and some of the independent production companies too, and have a look to see what opportunities they've got and just apply. But what we're going to be doing as well, inshallah, this year is going to be doing a road show with some of the broadcasters.
Okay.
And kind of evangelizing that there are a lot of opportunities, and these are the kind of opportunities available too. But also we're taking that one step further. We're going to schools as well.
Amazing.
So we're doing these stereotyping workshops for schools where they're Muslims and non-Muslims as well, but filmmaking workshops as well. Okay. So we want to see, are you interested in filmmaking? If you are, you can get a taster, and should you want to continue, then we can.
I had that in media studies when I was younger in college.
What do you mean when you were younger? Well, a couple of years back.
I'm not in college anymore, is what I'm trying to say. But if I had that, it would have been so profound, and I would have remembered all that stuff moving, because I went down that industry, right? So the effect and the impact that will have on these children will be amazing.
It's just down to time and resource, because again, we're a small organisation. There's a lot of work we want to do, but again, it's just down to resources, and we have to be quite focused as well.
100%. Well, I mean, it's been an absolute pleasure.
Oh, likewise.
Having you on Aik Cup Chai. You didn't even drink your tea.
You know drank what? Just I just realised I did. This is so lovely. You made this yourself?
Yeah, Masala Chai.
It's not like one of those Masala Chai tea bags.
No, tea bag.
Ali, is it?
Me. No, it's not. It's not.
I was going to say, let me ask you that question.
I swear it's not. He's probably bugging him.
No, it's not.
He's tough. Ali's tough. Yeah. He's bad cop, isn't he, this one?
I think so. I think you're right. Yeah. It's bad cop, good cop. But nah, listen, it's been a pleasure having you on. We really appreciate it. You've been tuned into Aik Cup Chai, Crossing Cultures, presented to you by the independent Urdu. My name is Shaikh. This is my co-host Ali, and we'll be back same time, same place next week. Chai.